Welcome to Open Mind Night, a show that talks about everything mental health and mental illness related. I'm your host, Robin Tamanaha, licensed marriage and family therapist. Joining me on this episode is my guest, Monty Ghitter. Is that the correct pronunciation?
Yep, perfect.
Yeah, Ghitter. Yay. He has 37 years of experience in software engineering, 20 years of experience with bipolar type 1, and he's the founder of the Bipolar Support Club on Clubhouse. Hi, Monty.
Hi,
Hi, how are you? Thanks for being here.
I'm doing great today. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So before we get started, I definitely want to spend some time, talking about the Bipolar Support Club, which I've been a fan of, I think, since the inception of it. It's really, really cool and a great resource. But before that, I thought maybe we'd talk a little bit about your personal journey and what that's kind of looked like for you before the Bipolar Support Club came to be about.
Yeah, well, it's a pretty long journey. Like you said, I've been a little older person. I graduated in 1984, and I was always in software engineering, and most of the time was in management of software engineering. And I'd rise through the ranks of different high-tech, big R&D firms, and managing teams of people on projects. And it would be a combination of people management and project management. And I didn't realize it at the time, but there were bipolar traits coming out back then that I didn't recognize. And a lot of it are some of the positive bipolar traits. They led to a lot of upward mobility that I never intended or planned or asked for. And so I got into these positions that might not have been the best fit for me, because bipolar people also have a lot of empathy and easy to put ourselves in the shoes of other people. And I had some very difficult situations to manage and some very frustrated engineers, and that took a lot out of me. And at one point, around the turn of 2000, 2001, we got acquired twice. And so I had a boss in Israel and a boss in California and a team of people in Canada. And that was it for me. That pushed me over the edge, and I had my first episode, and that's when I got diagnosed with type 1. And so it was kind of stemming out of work related stress for the most part. And also I had a big tie between my occupational identity and my self-identity. And so I was really wrapped up in work yeah, so that's kind of how it got there. And then the next 20 years it's been since then has been quite a struggle, because I had so much denial. It was really difficult to accept not the diagnosis, but the treatment. I was okay being told you're bipolar and your dad was bipolar. And I lost my father when I was a young boy to suicide. And so I didn't deny that, but I just didn't like the idea of the treatment. And I rejected the pharmaceuticals and the medical community. And I thought everyone has different opinions and they just want to put a label on you and check off some boxes. And I just had these really negative opinions to the other people that wanted to help me. And I wanted to stubbornly figure it out myself. And that's another one of my personality traits, is really stubborn. And I went through 7 manic episodes, all with like 16 to 30-day hospitalizations for being psychotic break and over the line and all that. And each one of them was excruciating. And each one of them, I learned a bunch of stuff. And each time I'd come out of it going, okay, now I know that. And still stubborn until finally, 2017, I had my worst one. And that they always followed by a depressive cycle, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so 3 years of 18, 19, and 20 of just pretty much in bed. And when COVID came, it was a non-event for me, because I was already isolated and alone and in bed and depressed. So, but then 2021 came around and everything changed. So maybe I'll leave it there. That's kind of what the journey's been up until this year.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that, for sharing your story. If you don't mind me asking, because I'm kind of, curious, and I think that's understandable. And I've heard that before, it's hard, I think, with the treatment. And was there something that had changed for you along the way as far as help or support, or it sounds like for some time, it was kind of difficult, when it came to treatment and all that. Was there something that happened for it to shift, or?
To shift into acceptance, you mean?
Yeah, that, or like when it came to the treatment or therapy, or
Yeah,
these.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I have a good relationship now with my nurse practitioner and my psychiatrist, and that came about as, like I said, there's a depression that follows a big peak like that. And during that 3 years, I did spend quite a bit of time um, with my nurse, with my psychiatric nurse. I wasn't in therapy, but it was kind of like therapy. She was really good and spent quite frequently with me. And slowly, 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 I dragged myself out of the depressive phase. It took a long time. And, but through that, I mean, I sort of built more trust. I started taking the medication. For me, the medication never has helped. I've tried it many times on the depressive side. It's never helped me, antidepressants in any way, but the mood stabilizers and the antipsychotics, if I need them, those are really important for me. And I finally understand that. So it turns out I'm not the smartest one about me.
It's hard. It's a challenge. And so what I hear you almost saying too is having, like you mentioned, the nurse practitioner, kind of building, we call it like kind of building a little bit of a relationship, and like a working relationship, or trust and connection, that probably really assisted with that too. And like finding a good fit.
It helped a lot. It helped a lot. The way I think of it these days, it's like 25% of the equation, getting that relationship in place, getting some medication that's preventative and helpful and not huge side effects. And that's a big piece, but there's other pieces too that are super important.
Yeah. Yeah. So, you mentioned leading up to 2021, I think, and now we're, at least at the time of this recording, we're, in December. So we're coming up to, the end of the year. What's it been like for you in 2021?
It's been an absolutely amazing year of transformation for me. I can't really explain it. I've arrived at a place now today where I have some comfort about who I am and what I'm doing. I have some optimism about no more major episodes. And I'm doing work that I like doing, and I'm finding new opportunities in places that I never thought of. And it's this really unfamiliar feeling of, maybe this is what normal people feel like.
Yeah, and during this year too was the Bipolar Support Club as well, because that was what, like,
Well,
when did that start? What was that?
well, we started it as kind of a casual thing. What happened was I found, and this bipolar club ends up being 50% of that equation I was telling you about. It started by me getting onto the platform by a referral from a friend. I had no idea what Clubhouse was. And I got on there and I was just fascinated because I'm a technology guy. I'm a bit of a nerd and whatnot. And I'd never seen anything like it because, in addition to how we're using it, Clubhouse has this tribe finding functionality where you can jump into a room and listen. And if you like it, you can hang out and you can kind of see who's saying what and immediately start networking. It's unbelievable. And if you go into a different room and you don't like what's being said, you just leave, right? And so I was hypomanic for a couple of weeks, spending all day, every day on Clubhouse, meeting people and going into rooms and all that. And inevitably, you find other people in the same headspace and stuff, right? And so I found Stephanie and Larissa, these two amazing women who were talking about similar stuff that I was talking about. I said, well, let's start some of our own rooms. And we started running rooms. And we ran 2 a week, every week for like 6 months, just the three of us, just tried doing that regularly. And people started coming and really benefiting from having discussions about what's going on for them, right? In a room full of people that kind of understand some of what has happened for them. And can share their own tips and experiences and things like that. And so the level of quality of the peer support with the help of these facilitators has been unbelievable. And then, by the summer, it's like, okay, this is a thing. Let's make it a thing. And we created the Bipolar Support Club, and we put it on all the Twitter and Instagram and stuff. And we added a speaker series as well. Beyond the peer rooms, we started thinking, what if we brought in experts on different topics, sleep hygiene and neurochemistry and all kinds of topics. We had a panel on technology where the head of different companies were coming in and talking about their eMoods app and stuff like that. And just all kinds of various stuff like that. And the members really like it. They get this information and education that it's kind of tailored to their interests. And the other thing that's good for me from a selfish point of view is these sort of bigger names. Like we bring in psychiatrists who are bipolar themselves, and they talk all about, their professional journey intersecting with their bipolar journeys. It's amazing. But for me, it's cool because they bring in some of their followers, and we get a little more exposure, right, for our club. And so it's just been fascinating being part of helping turn this thing into a thing. And now it really has grown. We've gone from a few hundred members in the summer to, I think it's 1,200 on Clubhouse and just past 1,000 on Instagram. And it's kind of going now. And I don't know what it'll be when this airs, but it'll be interesting to see.
That is so wonderful. And I think, so I've been a fan of of the club, because and two, being that also is like my niche and my specialty and my practice. I'm like, this is wonderful. And I even remember like sharing it with people because I was so excited about it. Such a great resource, whether it's the peer support. And I thought that that panelist speaker series was really, really cool, but like in a way where, because that's kind of how Clubhouse works, where you also get to interact with them and actually ask them like questions. So there's even like more engagement and more connection with people who are in the field, are knowledgeable about these topics, or created certain things. I'm like, this is so amazing. Like, how often do you get the chance to like do a Q&A with someone about a topic you've been thinking about, or a struggle that you have, or a question? I think that's really, really powerful.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, and also the peer rooms are surprisingly valuable, like from a cost benefit point of view, I guess. Because imagine we get guys coming in, men and women coming in and sharing their story. And sometimes it's really difficult and troubling and whatnot. And yet these facilitators that are helping run the room, they're so knowledgeable and they provide such useful feedback. And there's a few of them that complement each other from their own different perspectives. And we have a lady named Karen who's just got this huge, amazing history of her own, plus a huge advocate and busy in so many areas. It's so amazing to have her in our rooms. And so the people that come in get the benefit of that, right? People who might otherwise wait for 2 weeks to go see their therapist for $150, they drop into our peer room for free and get 3 people listening and understanding and supporting and giving feedback, and also other people on the stage do. And so the real bread and butter of why we do it is for the peer support and actually hands-on helping people out. And the speaker stuff is awesome, and it actually is most of the work for me, but it's gravy. It's an added benefit.
Yeah. How often are the peer support groups each week? Like, how often do they run?
These days that we're having 3 a week and 1 speaker panel a week. And as we grow, we don't want the peer rooms to get too big, because then they don't have the same opportunity for space for people. So we're going to add more rooms, and we'll just add more rooms and more facilitators. But the speaker panels, those scale up easily because those rooms can have lots of people. So we're marching ahead, and we don't know where it's going, but we're loving what we're doing and we're helping a lot of people. And the other thing I wanted to say is I had no idea how much it was going to help me. When we started all this back in March, I'm like, I'm Mr. 20 years of bipolar experience. I can share my wisdom with everybody. Right? That's what I thought. I knew so much, right? And I did know a lot about my own journey, but I had no idea how little I knew about how many other different kinds of journeys there are and how many other different kinds of struggles there are and how many different kinds of tips and tools people might be using to help manage. And I've learned so much this year. So it's been personally huge, beneficial. And it's a lot of why I was able to report earlier about how nice and unfamiliar it is these days.
Yeah, the benefit of peer support, but also it's interesting how that sometimes works out, where you start something and then it ends up, and I think too, for a lot of things, especially things that are very like mission driven like this, where there's like a purpose and there's an intention and you have like your clear why, like that passion, there's usually like some sort of personal, connection. And through that, there's even like more personal growth or inside growth for the person who's creating even more. It's bound to happen. And I think in a, setting like Clubhouse, and then what you're doing too, like so many people are coming in with different information. Like it's so neat to just kind of be a sponge and kind of collect it all and be like, oh, I never thought of that, or I never thought of it this way, or you're doing things like this, that's something I could try, or that's something new, I never thought of that. I think
Exactly.
that's really, really neat.
Yeah, we have so much to teach each other. And the whole reason the peer rooms work is because people are willing to be vulnerable and share what's truthfully, authentically going on with them in kind of a public space, right? It's weird for people. We have lots of people that just come and listen in the peer rooms because they like the discussion, but they're not ready to speak yet, which is fine. They can listen in podcast mode and kind of benefit from that. But the real value is the people who are willing to be vulnerable and to share stuff about what's going on and talk about it with the rest of us. And then the discussion is where the value is, because all kinds of stuff comes out that you don't even expect. It's really cool.
Yeah. And especially during a time where, because I mean, we're still in it, but I mean, past like few years with this pandemic and, like you mentioned before, like, people being isolated. So now I think silver lining with some of these platforms is it's a way, to connect. So it must have been so interesting to like have this community being built during a time where it kind of went up and down. At least I'm in the States, in the US, and when it came to like feeling connected and then feeling disconnected at times. So it must have been so interesting to have this during a time when like we were just very up and down
Yeah,
when it came to our social interaction too.
for sure, especially in North America. I would say, based on even a recent panel, that it's different in different places in the world. We have lots of people coming to us from India, and it's weird times of the day for them, but they feel like they have no other outlet, not even in their own families and stuff, right? And so it didn't take COVID for them to feel alone and isolated with their mental health, right?
Yeah.
And so, being able to be a resource for some folks like that, it's been super cool. And everyone's coming from like everywhere,
Mhm.
Australia and Greece and Morocco and lots from the UK. And it's really awesome.
That's really neat. And two, like, for different diagnoses, or just having and living with mental illness in general, I always, which is why, I do these, podcasts, or I do blogs, or I do all these things, to really help people have a voice in talking about things, and also to clarify things, because I think things aren't always like talked about. Like you mentioned, the cultural component, or just shame in general, or, embarrassment with different things, so there's so much power, in showing up. And I feel like, Clubhouse is audio, but still it's like a way to be seen, and felt understood and felt valued and validated in what you're going through with your particular struggle, which is sometimes hard, especially when it comes to like even bipolar disorder. I'm kind of more on the provider end, but like, I sometimes get frustrated at some of the misunderstandings or just the lack of information,
Yeah.
really. Mm-hmm.
Well, and also something that frustrates me with advocacy in general, there's lots of well-intended people out there trying to speak their voice and trying to add to the discussion and whatnot. But the frustration I have is that 95% of the memes and the quotes and the suggestions and the tips are all dark and negative and all about how bad it is and what a struggle it is and all that. And it's true. A lot of that's true, and it's based in real hard facts. But what's missing is there's all kinds of beneficial traits that many bipolar people share. I'm not going to stereotype and say we're all the same, but there's lots of traits that I think are common across bipolar people that never get the attention of what they deserve, creativity and synthesis and empathy and being able to connect dots and see a bigger picture, right? One of the reasons I was successful in software was because I could talk to the business guys about business in their language, and I could talk to the technical guys about technology in their language, and I could bridge the gap. And I think partly because of a bipolar trait of being able to kind of understand people and then communicate about it. And so I just wish we could change the ratio from 20 to 2080 from 595.
Yeah. Yeah. There are so many positives, and also overall being successful. I think sometimes those memes are hard, the dark ones, or they're only focusing on particular, themes or something, and it can feel very defeating. And even as a reader, when I read it, I'm like, that doesn't sound very empowering at all. And how would someone feel about themselves if that's predominantly what they were saying, when they have so many other things that are a part of them that they can offer and that are great qualities, like you said, are actually kind of helpful in some ways too.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So since the inception of the Bipolar Support Club, I know you mentioned, we went over like the value of peer support and connection and all that. I'm kind of curious. It's been some time, and I know there have been so many different, meetings and like panelists and, probably listeners or followers, on social media. Have you like received any feedback or comments or messages or just insights that were kind of more like surprising, but like surprising in a good way? Like, oh, I never really expected this. I never expected this to happen, or I never expected someone to reach out and say this particular thing.
Yeah, a little bit. How I would answer that, my most favorite thing that's just started to happen recently is, I mentioned about the speaker panel series, and it started in September. Mm-hmm. And so it's only been going like less than 4 months. And at first it was a panic and a struggle to find people and topics and get them lined up and get them organized and get them onto the app. No one had ever heard of Clubhouse and all this and then have ones lined up for week after week in a pipeline. I mean, it was super difficult, but the change that's happened is that we're getting more visibility. People are noticing us and they're seeing what we're doing, and they're coming to us going, how do I become a facilitator with you? How do I speak on one of your panels and stuff like that? So that's surprising. That's surprising input and very welcome, because it makes it a lot easier for me.
Yeah. And I think that's also like, that's definitely a reflection of the growth and like the reach. I think now, so you mentioned like even listeners all over the world, so that must feel really cool too, though. Yeah. Like it does make things easier when it comes to scheduling and planning, for sure. Yeah. But also that like others are reaching out to you and, always having to be like, oh my gosh, like who's next, because you're getting noticed. Like that's really neat.
It's feedback that we're on the right track. That's what it is for me. It's just like an affirmation and reassurance that people like what we're doing. So that's why we're taking steps to keep doing it, and we're going to keep growing as more rooms are needed. And I don't know where else it might lead, but yeah, for now, it's awesome.
Yeah, I love it. I think it's so, so great. Is there anything I didn't bring up that you wanted to mention or
I
speak of?
think we covered quite a bit of ground on the club.
Mhm.
Maybe I'll just go back and that 25, 50, 25 thing,
Yeah.
because I'm feeling pretty, like I said, confident and comfortable about self-care and outlook and things like that. And the way I kind of think about it these days is I've got 25% of my support system is the doctor, the medical, the drugs. I even have a plan with antipsychotics on hand if I start to get hypo that I can just
Mm.
start to take. And we've got it worked out about dosages, and so that, that's really good. So that's 25%. 50% literally for me is the peer support. And then the other 25 is things I've picked up along the way for self-care, things I just do myself. Try and eat a bit better, try and lose some of this weight I gained when I was depressed, right?
Mm.
Sleep, like get a handle on my sleep, and track. We all have learned how to be a little bit more mindful about where we're at mood wise in general with bipolar people, so that we can make little adjustments to help prevent moods from going that way and getting back more neutral and stuff like that. So 25% self-care, 25% medical, 50% peer support for me. And I've made some of my best friends in the world doing all this kind of work. It's unbelievable.
Wow, that's amazing. Thank you for sharing that, like your breakdown and how that's constructed, because that's important to think about, like kind of where it comes from, what that wellness plan looks like, and maybe different for everyone. But the important thing is that there is some sort of,
Yeah,
something that you're kind of figuring out. I'm like, oh, this much of this much of that. And I heard you say like
yeah,
tracking. So you mean like mood tracking, like the mood tracking stuff, or?
yeah,
Yeah, that's super important. Yeah, and
yeah,
help.
for sure. And I'm not like fixed on those. It's just a way of thinking about it, right? And
Yeah.
it's likely to shift down the road, and who knows what might happen with medications and other alternative treatments. And that's another topic we've got coming up, alternative treatments. So there's lots to learn.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh. Well, before we end though, um, if the listeners or viewers want to find out more about, I know there's the Clubhouse, right, in the Clubhouse, but social media handles or links or anything that maybe they could go to if they want to find out more about it.
You can see our link tree, which has a bunch of links to a bunch of stuff we do, including joining Clubhouse and what's our next event and how to talk to, if you want to book a call with us and all that kind of stuff. You can get there from Instagram. But we also have, you can get to the same place from our Facebook or Twitter page. And it's, if you just search for Bipolar Support Club, you should find us
Okay.
on any of those platforms.
Okay.
So yeah.
Got it. Is there anything else like I don't know if you have one, but I know other people have had like Patreon or like
Oh yeah.
coffee or something.
Thanks for mentioning that. I just created a Patreon page, and I've integrated it with Discord. And so the idea is, at the lowest level, you can be a supporter that says, we like what you're doing and we want to support you. But at some of the higher levels, you get access to where we hang out in Discord, and you can chat with us and you can suggest future topics and that kind of stuff. And then there's another level where you're subscribing at a higher rate, and it includes one of these private calls per month that I was talking about. I mean, we've been doing them kind of pro bono on the side, and we'll continue in some cases to do that. But it's a way, like, even if you want to sponsor someone, if you have a family member, you can pick this tier, and that family member will get like a private call a month and be in our space to chat with us and that kind of stuff. So it's pretty cool offering on Patreon. Yeah.
Wow, that's really neat. That's super creative too, how that, because everyone does a Patreon different. So I think that's really
Yeah.
cool. And
Yeah.
also being able to like support someone else too in their journey. That's amazing. That's really amazing.
Yeah, so hopefully some people will be interested in that down the road. I think we have something like 3 patrons right now. But you know, you start these things somewhere and hopefully they grow. I'm always a little bit cautious about promoting
Mm.
something like a Patreon page because I don't want to do it in the rooms because I don't want members to feel like I'm asking them for a membership fee. I'm not. It's more like a tip jar or something like that, right? And so yeah, we'll see how that goes. Also, the speaker panels, we record them, and I'm going to make the whole archive of them available to patrons. Whereas the ones that hang around on Clubhouse, I'm going to start, you know, maybe having 5 or 6 weeks of them up at a time and then rolling them off into the archive for the
Okay.
patrons. Yeah, so something along those lines.
Yeah,
And
so there's definitely a lot of perks as far as the
yeah,
Patreon, not just for, Bipolar Support Club, but also for those that are, providing the little, the little tips.
yeah, and
Yeah,
the caregivers, right? And yeah, so hopefully.
yeah. So what I'll do is I'll put everything that you said, all the social media handles, and then the Patreon link, all that kind of stuff. I'll put that in the show notes, and then I'll also put it on the YouTube channel description. So people could just click on it and easily explore, especially the link tree, because that seems to be like where a lot of things are hubbed.
Yeah, if you just put that one link, it basically
Okay,
has everything else. Yeah.
cool. Okay, so I'll put that in so that the listeners and viewers can check it out more, maybe provide some tips or just join Clubhouse and listen in or
Yeah, and we
get to
welcome
know others. So
suggestions.
many things.
We welcome suggestions. DM us with ideas for stuff because we really like people's involvement.
Great, great. Well, thank you so much, Monty, for being here and doing this. I was so excited when you said you would join because I've been, as you know, kind of in on the club and
Yeah,
super a fan of it and really like I said, so amazing. So I'm so glad that you decided to be a guest and it was a pleasure having you on.
thanks so much for having me. It was fun and really great to be here. Really appreciate it.
Yeah. All right. Take care.
Okay, bye for now.